Do you know someone, maybe a parent or a grandparent, or maybe even yourself, that you know would be safer if they walked with a cane or a walker, but no matter what you say, they refuse to do so because they don't want to be thought of as disabled? Well, been there, done that. I want to share with you in this video what it took for me to move past that mental block that stopped me from using a cane at the time, that in the end proved to allow me to walk with a lot greater safety. Well, let's face it, no one aspires to use a cane or a walker. You'll never have a lineup of people waiting to buy a cane. And the thing about that is it's a bit of a backward thing, because on the one hand, people want to remain as independent as possible, yet they don't want to be seen as having to use a device because somehow that is making a statement about, having a disability. It's a bit, ridiculous, but that's just the way it works. Now myself, because I have a progressive disease, so then that means things change for me and I lose abilities over, a period of time. And I had this theory when I was younger, which, I can only put down to being youthful and, just not very bright. I thought at the time that if I gave in and used a cane, then that would mean I was one step closer to using a walker and a little closer to moving toward using a wheelchair or a scooter and all of those things. So I kind of thought, well, if I hold off, then, anyways, I had it all backwards. Because what happened was I was maybe 21 at the time. And where I was living, we had a dog, a Sennheiser, that went missing. And so a few of us went looking for this dog in the wooded area. And the dog was very familiar with me, so they thought I should, go along and help them look for the dog. And so I did. Now my walking at the time was very unsteady. I tripped and fell over very easily. And so I fell a lot as I was trying to walk through this wooded area. And then somebody that I was with gave me this really big stick to walk with, like, just a big walking stick, really, that she found in the forest. And so I thought, well, no one's really watching. There's nobody around because, we all went off in our own area to search for the dog. I thought I'll give it a go. And so as it turned out, I was really quite impressed and quite surprised that I was able to maneuver pretty well without falling. And so that was a real eye-opener for me to have that forced experience to try it out, really. And in the end, we did find the dog, so it's a good story. But after that, I remember thinking, a couple days later, I was driving somewhere and I saw a store, medical aid store. And I pulled in and I sat in the parking lot and thought about it and thought, well, that stick really did help. So I went into the store and I was very fortunate to meet this really wonderful gentleman who really took the time with me to think it through, because I explained to him, well, he could see the way it was walking, that I would benefit from using a cane. And so I was looking at the different canes and he took the time to explain to me, how when you lean on a cane for any length of time, when you really need that support, it will wobble. So he suggested one of the canes with, looks like a bit of a dent in it. And that helps to prevent the wobble. And then also the kind of handle he suggested, because of my hand difficulties in gripping, that the softy grip thing would be very good to help prevent sore hand and circulation. And so, he fitted me, told me I had the best place to length and whatnot. And so then I tried it out in the store, and it was just like when I discovered with that big stick in the forest. I was really surprised at the extra stability that I felt. And so it was pretty remarkable. So I bought it. I think it was the best $30 investment I ever made in my life. And took it away with me, and I was a little apprehensive to actually use it. I kept it at home for a little while and I wasn't really using it. And then I talked to a friend. This woman was like a second mother to me, I guess. Her name is Lynn, and she's really a no-nonsense kind of person. And I had said to her, about buying the cane, and I just really wasn't sure, and yada yada yada, all in my head about using a cane. And she was perfectly fit. She skied, and she really didn't have any of those issues, fortunately. And I remember she sat down, and in her very no-nonsense way, she said to me, Susie, it's really simple. If it helps you, you use it. And if it doesn't, you don't. And then she got up and walked away. And I remember thinking, wow, that really, really simplified and took all that, yada yada out of my mind. And kind of really freed me. Just enabled me to, it was meant to help me. And from that day forward, I used a cane for the next, well, a long time, let's just say that. And I was surprised at how much it helped me. And the interesting thing about that is now, of course, I use a walker many years later. And I ran into the same thing with the walker. I was reluctant to use it because the cane had become my best friend, and but it really wasn't enough anymore. I needed a little bit more support. And then one of my friends said to me, if you had a walker, you'd be able to put a cup of tea on it and then move into the next room. Because I was really having a lot of trouble doing that kind of thing. And I thought, yeah. So then I got a walker. And at first I just used it in the home. Because, again, nobody was going to see that. And then it didn't take very long, maybe a couple of weeks, and I could see the benefit. And then I started walking with a walker. So, it's really just having the opportunity to try one out in a way that doesn't feel that it's about your inability. Because you really kind of have to have the experience to see that it's really going to help you. So, while I don't like to trick people, sometimes I think it's a good idea. For example, last summer, my aunt was visiting, and we were doing a fair bit of walking, and she's in her 80s, and I was a little worried about her walking. She's stable and everything, but I was just concerned, tripping on sidewalks and whatnot. And so I had said to her, well, I wanted her to use the walker, but she didn't really want to use it. I don't need that. And so when we went out, and I was on my scooter, and I said to her, sometimes I really like to walk a little bit just to have some exercise. So maybe you could use the walker for me while I'm on my scooter, and then we could trade. So I made it about me. So by making it about me, then she used it. And then it didn't take very long for her to say, gee, this feels pretty good. Because she could feel the stability, that a little extra stability that it gave her. So, it's really hard to accept when you need help. And we tend to think these aids and devices somehow make a statement about us. And I'm speaking for myself. That somehow it makes us appear as though we're more disabled than we are. But, that's just all the mental stuff that goes on in your mind about, the whole self-identity and self-esteem and self-perception and all of those things. But I must say, you know, in terms of being in public with those, using those aids and devices, it really made a difference as well, because when I started walking with a cane, I was amazed at the sort of invisible respect people gave me for space, which was really important because I was so unstable. If it just brushed against me, I'd be like on the floor. So that was really helpful. I mean, so it kind of gave people a visual cue to just, you know, respect and give me some space, because nobody really wants to obviously hurt you or to cause you to fall. So that was helpful. And the same is true with a walker. You know, there's that, because you have that visual device that people can see, then, you know, hey, it just is really helpful. And I've found that, you know, I still obviously I'll still walk with a walker. A cane just doesn't do it anymore. And it's kind of funny now, because when I think about it now, it's, I think about all that, you know, the emotional distress I put myself through thinking about using a cane. And now I think about using the cane as the good old days. So, you know, that just makes me laugh to think that. And I really do miss being able to just use a cane. I really, really miss that independence. But the walker does give me the stability that I need in the home, and that's where I'm at right now. But I do appreciate that it's very difficult for people to allow themselves to take that step and get that support they need. And I see a lot of older people out, and, you know, walking in the street that I know would definitely benefit from the support of a cane or a walker. But it's really hard to, you know, to get to that point where you can accept that. So if you do have a parent or a grandparent or someone in your life that you think might benefit from walking with some support, maybe share this video with them. Because sometimes I find learning from others is the best way to learn. And, you know, I've been there, done that. So I really, truly do know the experience. And experience counts in this regard. But one thing to remember is, what I always like to say is, you know, walkers were called walkers for a good reason. So I hope that that's helpful. And look forward to sharing with you some more information about how to live a good disabled life. And until next time, be gentle with yourself and those around you. Bye for now.